As Harvard has been in the news a lot lately because of, the Supreme Court decision, a lot of people have been looking at who is being let into these colleges. And outside, of course, we know the legacy admissions thing where it's majority them folks getting in on legacy admissions. But they also been looking at who they've been letting in who are black and exactly where they're from. Are they descendants of slaves or freedmen? Are they, immigrants that just came over? Are they first generation? And we're seeing an overall pattern of them getting immigrants or first generation immigrants to go to these schools over the descendants of slaves. Let's go ahead and roll that.
And Norman, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio.
So I'm Ife, my full name is Ifalua Adedoku. I'm from Queens, New York.
My name is Kimani Panthier, and I'm originally from Long Island, New York.
How do you identify?
Caribbean American.
Nigerian American.
I'm a black woman.
Schools like Harvard aren't keeping track of their black students' backgrounds, but students I've spoken with estimate that less than a third of Harvard's black students are generational African Americans.
I was born here, but my parents, most of their adult life was spent in Nigeria.
Generationally African American, which basically means that you're a descendant of enslaved people.
I'm the son of two immigrants who migrated here in their early adult life.
We sent a detailed list of questions to Harvard about their diversity and recruitment efforts, the proportion of black students who are descendants of enslaved people, and those whose families have more recently immigrated, as well as their efforts to address the school's connections to slavery. The school responded with a handful of web links and then declined to comment further. For its part, Harvard in 2019 launched an initiative called Harvard and the Legacy of Slavery to, quote, understand and address the enduring legacy of slavery within our university community. Is the institution doing enough to actually remedy any of the past?
Simple answer is no. They're missing out on the key part, which is, admitting and seeking out and recruiting generationally African American students, specifically ones that are directly impacted by the effects of slavery. So that's redlining, underfunded public schools, over-policed communities, low-income areas. All of those are directly impacted by the effects of slavery.
In the meantime, black students from the diaspora are trying to understand where they fit on Harvard's yard.
It was just interesting to see that as I stepped here, I knew people who had come from where I came from and kind of had to conform to the culture here, but we're from Africa.
One of the major disappointments for me coming on the campus was that I imagined it to be this great melting pot, and yet it did not live up to that expectation.
In what ways?
I was expecting I would have white friends, Asian friends, Latinx friends, African friends. But when I got on campus, I found that it was quite the opposite. People stuck to their different cliques. It was just diverse on paper, but in actuality, the college is very segregated.
What I have found out is that white supremacy actually prefer a black immigrant over a black American for a few reasons. They prefer them because they don't really have the history with them like we have. That's one. Number two, they don't have a 500-year-old beef that we constantly and still engaging in. Number three, they will never say nothing about reparations to them. Four, the people here don't feel guilty when they see them. You understand? When they hear us speaking and even look at us daily, they feel guilty. When they look at the Africans or Caribbeans, they see their names, their last names, and they're like, well, hey, they don't feel the legacy of slavery. But when you hear black folks' names here, our names constantly preach to them that we were enslaved. Our last names. Because our last names come from the slaveholders that had us, unless our family changed our name. And some people, black families did change the name and things like that over time. They say, but the names that black folks got when they first got here, their last names and even their first names was by the slave master. So if you hear someone with the name Johnson and Jones and all of that, that's tied to slavery. And every time they hear that name, they're like, oh boy, they know what they did. So they're more comfortable bringing in immigrants, and at the same time, they can threaten immigrants to stay in line or I'm gonna ship you back. They can't threaten to send us anywhere. Where would they go send us to? We have no other country that we can go to just like en masse. No, we don't have that whatsoever. But Harvard was built by slaves. So they should have more descendants of slaves going to these schools. And I understand what they do. They go to the best of the best in the African continent, in the Caribbean, and they recruit them, creating a brain drain in the African continent, which harms the African continent. So they're harming the African continent through the brain drain. Instead of their government stepping in and saying, no, you're not going to do no brain drain, not here. No. Matter of fact, they got to come back here. They can't even go over there. Because one thing Gaddafi was doing, he was allowing them to get educated in the West, but they had to come back. They had to. It wasn't nowhere else around it. Because you can't have a brain drain. That'd be like in America, all the smartest people we have, all of them leaving. Well, eventually that's going to have an effect on the country. So we definitely need some descendants of slaves to be getting Ivy League education. The only thing I say about that is come back to the community and share that knowledge. That way we can get that knowledge from them. But let me know what y'all think about this situation. And like the brother was talking about, you know, he thought, oh, everything was diverse, it would be together. No. This country is segregated. You know, they talk about certain cities, they got segregation. No, the whole country is segregated. It is. People don't be with each other like that. Hell, African immigrants and Caribbean immigrants don't even be with Black Americans like that. So that's not even talking about other groups. All y'all separate. Come on now.